Alright, we're on our second one for the day, everyone. This is a 2012 Honda Civic. Now, the vehicle has been to a mechanic and an auto electrician due to a charging fault. So when the car come in, Medi's checked our battery. So the battery was completely dead. It was at 8 volts, not charging whatsoever. Now, the interesting thing with this is when it was sitting at idle, the battery was completely discharging. So we had about 20-ish amps going out of the battery at idle. As soon as you put some load on the system, put your headlights on, everything, the generator bumps straight up to 14.5 volts. So this alternator and the charging system did and does have the capacity to charge, but at idle there is no charge rate whatsoever. It's just discharging completely. So that is very interesting. All right, faults are cleared, and as you can see, we're still only at 12.7 volts idling, and we'll go check our multimeter and amp clamp out and see. I bet this battery is just discharging. There's no charge rate going into it still. 12.4, 12 amps coming out of it. So that's our problem. At idle, this alternator isn't putting out anything whatsoever. So the next thing we need to do to confirm what is going on is we need to go into our data stream, and we want anything to do with the alternator, the generator, to see if it's being commanded at a set voltage or not. Alright, as we can see, our battery is draining at 6 amps and our battery current sensor is reading to 12.3 volts. So this isn't charging at idle, and even if we bump up the RPM a bit, you can see it starts to charge. So going from there, we're definitely leaning towards a failed/failing alternator. I just want to cycle through all this live data and make sure there's nothing that I've missed, so no charge rate data or anything that I've missed. It'd be great if we had like a commanded charge rate or something, but we haven't got any of that, unfortunately, by the looks of it. Alright, so back under the bonnet, as you can see, we've got a charge rate of 14.5 volts. We've got about 2.4 amps going into the battery, which makes sense. So our battery current sensor here, which is just a big shunt, is working fine. Our ECU can monitor that. I think we're going to have a failed aftermarket alternator. I think we're going to have issues with the aftermarket alternator, because this car started having issues before this was fitted, and once this was fitted, it didn't rectify anything. So looking at this alternator, I can't see what brand it is, but it doesn't look genuine to me. Even on the back of the reg there's no writing or anything on the back of it. There's no stamping or anything. So what we're going to do next is we're going to get the scope and we're going to tee into that LIN bus wire. We're going to make sure we've got good communication with the lights on and off. If that's the case, then it's getting a genuine alternator. Alright, so here's our final check. As you can see, we've got the LIN wire hooked up there. I might bump the time scale down there one more just to show it a little bit quicker. So this is with the headlights on. Headlights are on, alternator's charging. We've got 2 amps going into the battery. It's at 14.3 volts, as you can see. We're going to turn the headlights off and we're going to see if we lose comms. So that's headlights off. As you can see, our charge rate's disappeared. We're down to 12.9. We've got 13 amps getting drawn from the battery, and we've still got communication. So that to me proves that this vehicle needs a genuine alternator fitted. The fact that we've still got ECU control at this alternator, and no charge rate, essentially discharging the battery constantly, that's good enough for us to fit a genuine alternator. We know the battery monitor sensor's working fine, because as you can see, we're at 12.5 roughly. We've got what, 12.5 amps going out, 12.5 amps going out. So Honda needs a genuine alternator. Alright, so one last check on the Honda before we just go for the alternator, and I'm glad I've done it now. We've got the battery drain hooked up, so we've got the multimeter set in amps across the battery, and as you can see, we've got a 500 milliamp drain. Now I've found, and this is going to be quite tricky one hand, but I've found the only fuse in this under hood fuse box anyway that's drawing is this 10 amp down the bottom, and it's a dome fuse. Hang on, I'll get the leads on there and we'll show you. There we go, as you can see, we've got voltage drop across that dome fuse. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up our power probe charts and we're going to check what 0.4 volt drop jumps to. The other thing we can try and do is just yank that fuse out and see if we lose our 500 milliamp drain. Alright, moment of truth, we're going to just pluck that 10 amp out, bang, down to 12 milliamps. So that is our battery drain. We've got a 500 milliamp drain on the dome fuse.